What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Temur Indomitable Creativity for the Pioneer format. If you are familiar with the modern version of the deck, you are trying to put like a card called Arcana Cruelty into play, which has a powerful enter the battlefield ability and also triggers when it attacks, and does a lot of like crazy things kind of on its own, and that's kind of the game plan of the modern version. While the Pioneer version is definitely heavy like on establishing a combo, it does something very powerful, and unlike necessarily the modern version, usually you can resolve like one Indomitable Creativity, and that is going to more than likely end the game, and we'll kind of get into that here shortly. But of course, if you are not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more content like this, you want to see some modern stuff, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, you know when those videos get posted. An even better way of staying in the loop on even more content posted to the channel, or just what I do in general, I have a link to my Twitch channel in the description of the video. Go ahead and follow that over there so you know when I go live. And I also have a Discord server, so if you want to learn, talk about magic, all that fun, happy stuff, consider following over there as well, and joining through the link. So, as I alluded to in that kind of intro, this version of the deck, at least of creativity, you are able to hopefully just resolve Indomitable Creativity once and the game is over. Indomitable Creativity is this fancy sorcery here that says you destroy X target artifacts and or creatures, and for each permanent destroyed this way, you reveal cards to you reveal an artifact or a creature. You set them aside, until you finish resolving the spell, and then once you basically hit the number of creatures or whatever that you need, you can put them into play. So, the important note, in Domino Creativity, you have to destroy your own things to be able to search for your things. You can't destroy two of your opponent's creatures and then flip your own deck because they'll end up flipping theirs. So just something to know. Also, this card needs to destroy the permanents that it targets. So if for some reason you target a creature, you target an artifact, and your opponent go for the throats your creature, you only get one, essentially, like destroy one thing, and then you get to flip for one creature. It's kind of like a way to like stop, I guess, this deck from going off, but you could always choose more targets, even though you only have technically 2 hits in the deck with the Xenagos, God of Revels, and Worldspine Worm, to kind of avoid, losing to like a removal spell or maybe an Abrade or something like that on like one of your token artifacts. You can just pay more mana into the Indomitable Creativity to increase the likelihood that you are going to be able to destroy enough permanents to actually put your win conditions into play. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. Worldspine Worm is one of the 2 creatures that you can hit off of Indomitable Creativity, and it's a 15/15 trample for 11 mana. And when it dies, you make 3 5/5 worm tokens, and if it were to be put in the graveyard from anywhere, it shuffles into your library. Big body, but that's obviously not necessarily enough on its own. That's where a Xenagos God of Revels comes into play, even though when it's on the battlefield, if your devotion to green and red is less than 7, it isn't a creature. While it is in your deck, it is a creature, so Indomitable Creativity will put it into play, even if when it is put into play, it won't be a creature. So the key thing about this card is that it says at the beginning of your combat on your turn, another creature gets haste and +X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. So you essentially have a hasty 30/30 trampling Worldspine Worm that is more than likely going to end the game in a lot of scenarios. And if for whatever reason it doesn't, your opponent is going to have to put a ton of creatures, ton of bodies in front of it to more than likely not die to it. And even if they get rid of your worm, you end up having like 3 5/5s, to which then Xenagos turns one of them into a 10/10 trampler, and you still just have a ton of power in play. And future Indomitable Creativities will have a target 2 hit, it'll have the Worldspine Worm, and then you can continue to smack your opponent for 30 trample each turn, up until you eventually win the game. Uh, but by and large, a lot of the time, you resolve a creativity for at least X equaling 2, you will end up winning the game just on that turn. So obviously, as we went through creativity, you need creatures and you need artifacts to destroy. So how the heck do we do that? Well, you have cards like Secrets of the Key, which investigates, and the spells cast from your graveyard. You investigate twice, so you cast flashback, something like that. Investigate means that you make an artifact clue token that you can pay 2 sacrifice to draw a card, but a lot of times it is just, destroy fodder for Indomitable Creativity. And you'll see like effects like that. You'll see like the big score will, kind of pull double duty where you can, dig through your deck. It'll allow you to draw 2 cards, also create 2 treasure tokens, which kind of conveniently curves into what the deck is trying to do, where you end step, big score, put 2 treasure tokens into play your 5th land, and then you're able to creativity X2, targeting the 2 treasure tokens, go get your things. This is like the ideal kind of setup. You play cards like Spell Pierce, Impulse to kind of dig for, whatever part of the combo necessarily you're missing. You have Make Disappears and Negates as like ways to kind of interact with your opponent in that regard. Volcanic Spite is actually a way where if you draw a Xenagos or a Wiltspine Worm, you are able to put that card on the bottom and get a new card for your troubles. I believe that there were some versions of this deck that were playing like Valakut Awakening, which would allow you to put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom and then draw that many +1. So that's kind of a way that you could ditch a bunch of irrelevant cards that you don't need, and then hopefully end up drawing into like maybe a creativity or like a way to make more artifact tokens or just tokens in general. Fable the Mirror Breaker is like a sneaky way that you can have 2 targets for your creativity. Of course, just making the Goblin Shaman, whatever. And then from there, like if it attacks, you make a treasure token, whatever. You have 2 targets there. Also, when it exiles and comes back as Reflection of Kiki Chiki, you also technically have 2 targets in that way with the token plus the reflection as well. So pretty neat. Obviously, of course, still probably one of the best 3-mana red enchantments, or just probably the best 3-mana enchantment in the format currently. And it's does a lot of work. It's very powerful. It's obviously on the chopping block, or always considered to be on the chopping block for a reason. It just kind of checks off all the boxes that these combo decks are looking for. Finally, you have cards like Dig Through Time, just as a one-of, but you can dig pretty deep into your deck. Looking at 7 cards, you need to pick 2 of them. Allows you to go right past your Xenagos or your Worldspine Worm if you end up finding it in that pile of cards, and then hopefully getting to take like an Indomitable Creativity, or maybe like some kind of interaction for your opponent, whether you need like Fiery Impulse or Spike Field Hazard, maybe another Impulse to dig even deeper. Just a lot of options that you have with a card like Dig Through Time. Moving on, you have your mana base and things like that. Mirrex being very interesting because it does technically fix your colors like the turn that you play it. Obviously, if you're looking to actually play one of these spells, you want to play this card and then use it to cast those spells. But even in the off chance that you don't, this does make 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Mites. Which obviously the important part being is that these tokens can then be targeted by Indomitable Creativity. So now there's a land in the deck that actually can make tokens outside of Sokenzan, Crucible of Defiance, which makes 2/1/1s, which is also pretty good to play like on turn 4, just to channel this, make 2/1/1s, and then untap and creativity for 2, go get your 2 things, and hopefully win the game. You have an Otawara as like a way to deal with like Grafdigger's Cage and things like that in the main. And of course, the rest of your lands, just tap for mana. You got some dual lands here, and like Stormcarved Coast and Spire Bluff Canal. It is Temur It is considered Temur Indomitable Creativity, but really like all of your lands tap for like red or blue. Like there's nothing here. Like you're not going to cast World Spine Worm or Xenagos because you're a mana base. It's mainly going to be through treasure tokens from like the Big Score, Fable the Mirror Breaker, even like technically playing a Mirrex, you can cast a Xenagos, so could come up. Sideboard, you get some Rending Volleys, Aether Gust, Disdainful Stroke, Negate, Brotherhood End, Mystical Dispute, Shark Typhoon, Hullbreaker Horror, Dig Through Time. Hullbreaker Horror being the most interesting one, because you'll see this in some creativity decks, like in Modern, where they play like one or two creatures that you could technically hit off of creativity, and they usually have some, you know, some cases where like they're pretty good. I know that there was a decent amount of like creativity decks that were playing just an Emrakul in their sideboard. You obviously bring it against like Mill in those situations. Also, just sometimes getting to creativity for one for a 15/15 that is going to stick around, is going to take care of your opponent's board and things like that is pretty good. And I imagine Hullbreaker here is also very good because you play a lot of cheap spells. You're going to be able to just kind of like keep bouncing your opponent's permanents and returning spells to their hand and just make it impossible for them to really get to resolve anything of note. Shark Typhoon, you just cycle this, make a really big shark, a Mystical Dispute, just cheap interaction, like what we were talking about with like Hullbreaker Horror. You could kind of like go into this like sort of kind of like a control deck, and once you find like a creativity to make a Hullbreaker Horror or something to that effect, it makes it very easy to continue to kind of control the game and win the game with like a Hullbreaker Horror. Uh, Brotherhood's End. Why is that card so difficult to read? Uh, Obviously, just very good against like mono white, and even some of the other like maybe like weird like affinity type decks that you might see in the format. I mean, really just used for the dealing 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Mono white is still very powerful. So Brotherhood End is just kind of like additional upside, from playing a card like Anger of the Gods instead of, over this. You want this just because it does offer a little bit more utility than, exiling creatures, which mono white doesn't really care. If their creatures are dead, they're dead. Disdainful Stroke, Aether Gust. Aether Gust really like mainly pretty good against like mono green. Mono green is one of the best decks in the format. It's definitely something to keep in mind. It is also like in that matchup where technically like World Spine Worming, depending on how much they went off, isn't going to necessarily win the game on that turn. So that's like a matchup to like kind of be careful for. Rending Volley, mainly I would imagine against Spirits. The fact that they play a lot of like counter spells. They play just a lot of like tempo-y type counter spells. So like Rending Volley is just like a clean, easy way of just like getting through all of that. Making it easy, killing their key spirits, and continuing to set up turns where you can just put your combo into play and then attack for the win. And that is a Temur Indomitable Creativity for Pioneer. This deck is in a pretty interesting spot for the fact that, like we had mentioned, Mono Green is one of the most popular decks in the format. Mono Green doesn't really interact that well or really at all with any of the decks, so you kind of have free reign to do your thing. The only problem with this in particular is the fact that Mono Green has a bunch of 4/4s and 4/5s, 5/6s, 6/6s, so on. They can put a lot of toughness on the board, and even if they flip a Pelucranos, it makes it even harder because it's virtually like 12 toughness, which means that like your 30 power thing like technically doesn't kill if they're not at full health, or if they're at 20 life, so definitely things to keep in mind, because against like mono green, this isn't necessarily just like an auto win, because they do have just natural outs of just playing their deck to not lose to it. However, as we had stated before, you just end up making a bunch of 5/5s. You probably take out a lot of the big creatures, and you just have another World Spine Worm that you can go get with future Indomitable Creativity. So, definitely a deck that I think is worth like kind of testing out and playing. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's super satisfying resolving an Indomitable Creativity. So, if anyone was like at least wanting to try it, I would implore you to do so, just because, again, the deck is a lot of fun. It has some nice play patterns to it, and not being the most busted thing in the format means that it's probably safe to, safe that it'll probably be around for a while. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and a comment down below if there's another Pioneer deck that you would like to see. Any deck tech gameplay, anything like that. I'm always open to suggestions. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell so you know when videos get posted. Go down in the description and look at the links. Follow me on Twitch, join the Discord server, all that stuff. That's gonna do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.